All right.
Well, hello.
Well, hi there, Connor. How are you?
Great to see you, Liz. How
It's
goes?
great. It's great to see you too. We figured it out.
Yeah. Oh, totally. We're geniuses. We're
We are
genius.
basically geniuses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to see it all over on everywhere on my screen though. Yuck. Um, so we were gonna get together and have just a casual chat about the family home when people are going through a divorce,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I get this question every single day. People wanting to divorce and not knowing what to do with a family home. So let's say that a couple come to you and they say, we want a divorce.
Mhm.
Um, you know, Partner A has been working full time, partner B has been stay-at-home parent, hasn't had a steady income, um, or hasn't had a steady income in a while, but wants to keep the house for the family, for the children, to keep them in the same neighborhood, to keep them going to the same schools, don't want to interrupt their lives. What do you tell them?
So realistically, it's going to be come down to which spouse is staying and which spouse is going. So, and what are the financials with that spouse that is staying? Because ultimately, it's gonna they in order to stay in that home, and they are going to have to refinance that loan just in their name. So there's one clarification I always like to bring up is the difference between the actual mortgage loan and the title to the home.
Mm,
People sometimes will just try to quit claim the other spouse off of the title. That does not have any bearing on the loan. In order to truly remove them from the loan, you do need to refinance that loan into your individual name. And in order to do that, you do need to qualify. So part of going through that process is, of course, just simply going through the typical qualification process for the refinance. Now, the one thing that, let's say it's the spouse that's staying was not the sole income earner, or was working from the home or working out of the home, and they are now going to be taking on additional either separate maintenance, alimony, and child support. We do have to wait a few months to be able to give them credit for that income. So about 3 to 6 months, depending upon the loan program that we ultimately select. And then again, also, but on the flip side of that, if they are actively working, of course, we can use whatever normal employment income that they're earning as, right now. But also, if they are the ones who are going to be paying alimony or child support or separate maintenance or anything along those lines, we do have to count those as liabilities against them. So once we go through that process, that's really where the financials go from it. And typically, of course, the spouse that is departing the residence is usually also getting a share of the equity of whatever the residence is. So we will have to do a cash out refinance, most likely in that
mm.
scenario, in order to make sure that uh, the spouse is made whole per whatever the agreement is, of course, with somebody like yourself, or if it's a court order, so
Mhm.
forth.
So I have several questions from what you said.
Yeah,
So for people who don't know what a quick claim is, can
yeah.
you
So
explain that?
So that is when you actually, so anyone who owns a house right now, their deed is kept at the county courthouse of whatever county they live in. They can go to that county courthouse and just simply say, if I for whatever reason, if I want to remove somebody from the title to my home, of course they would have to sign off on this as well. I can't just go in and say, I want,
Unilaterally kick someone off?
yeah, can't do that. You got to have obviously an agreement that this would take place. But you would go to that county courthouse and you would just simply remove that, request that they be removed from the title. Have the paperwork ready there. There's typically a small cost to do that, and of course, both parties need to agree uh, to that. And so that's something that frankly, anyone can do it at any given time, or even switch sometimes certain clients will switch the title into a different name, whether it's a business name, LLC, things along those lines.
And
And
what would be the advantage of this?
this would be just to make sure. Now, typically we would do this anytime we go through a refinance anyway. So this isn't like an extra step. So this isn't something that you would have to do. You would have to refinance and then go do this yourself. This is a part of when you do a refinance or a purchase of a home. There's a title company involved, and the title company themselves are the ones who takes care of this for you.
Got it.
That's not something extra that you would need to do, but is obviously making sure that whoever the home is supposed to be with, the title is solely in their name. Again, assuming that the other spouse agrees to this and that they are made whole by the equity that they are awarded during the process.
So, okay, and so you mentioned the non-earning spouse would need 3 to 6 months of spousal support and or child support if they were using that to qualify them for a mortgage.
That is correct.
And that depends on the product, I guess.
Correct. There's different loan programs and different products. There are going to be different guidelines and requirements for each one of those. So that's going to be a case by case basis depending on the client and what is going to fit their situation. Also, I should say that income also needs to continue for at least 3 years. So we have, as a part of our lending guidelines, we are what's called an ATR state, or an ability to repay, meaning we have to verify at least 3 years of continuance for this income. So for example, if the child is 17 years old or 16 years old, and it's only going to continue for either 1 or 2 years, we would not be able to award any sort of credit for that income. So it does have to continues.
So what kind of proof does the mortgage company need to see that? Do they need the separation agreement or the final court orders in order to?
Exactly. You nailed it. So that's exactly what we need, those two things. And then we would also verify their bank statements that they have been receiving this money for that amount of time. That's correct.
Okay. And so if a couple starts the divorce process and they don't know about this, it sounds like it could delay a person's ability to prove income. But if they did know about it early in the divorce process and they arranged for one party to start paying the other party maintenance or whatever, can they use those payments that are being made during the divorce process towards the 3 to 6 months?
Exactly. And that's really where what I would suggest in these agreements. And this is really where, as a mortgage loan officer, we love to come in and I offer my services to folks like yourself, attorneys, anybody who could potentially be influencing or impacting this agreement, and allow it to be in the agreement that they give a certain amount of time to get this process completed, because it's something that, dictates we need to get this done within 30 days. Well, then they're not going to be able to gain any credit for any of the income that they will be due. So typically I see at least 180 days or 6 months to complete this process, whether it's and the refinance and the equity that is to be due to the spouse within that amount of time. There's usually a process of we go through just the simple pre-approval process to make sure that they can be approved for a loan. And then they get an additional amount of time to actually execute that process and close on the refinance.
Okay. So would parties need to prove just simply by bank statements that they were getting this income during the divorce process, or do they need to have it in a temporary orders, or what do most mortgage companies require in order to verify that that's been happening? And what, yeah.
So both actually. So bank statements are the easiest way to do it. So again, if we have the final divorce decree and the final court orders and everything and separation agreements in place, and it dictates spouse A will be due $1,000 a month for maintenance or X amount, and we see that that has been deposited into their account for the last 3 months, then yes.
Okay, that counts.
And that's what verifies that. And then also in that agreement, it will dictate for how long they are to be receiving those payments.
Okay, all righty. So that was all really, really, really helpful information, and I hope
Good.
that anyone who is going through a divorce right now and is having questions about, how to handle the marital home, that will be helpful. I didn't know that when I went through my own divorce, and it took me a long time to really get clued in. One of the things that I know that both of us really strive to do with our clients is educate them and make sure that they're connected with people who know what the heck they're doing, who can advise specifically. Mortgages are very specific, and an attorney is not going to have all the information about a mortgage that a mortgage person is going to have, and et cetera, et cetera. So I get a lot of clients, like I said, who want to keep the house. They can't, and they struggle with their disconnect between their desire to keep the house and their inability to refinance it, right?
Yeah.
And as as you go further along in the divorce process, it becomes clear that you're either going to need the other spouse to stay on the mortgage, right, in order for them to keep it, which creates a whole load of complications down the road, presumably, or that both parties are going to have to sell the house and move somewhere else, which is a challenge if they have kids, or move into a much smaller home, or even just rent for a while. What do you, especially around here where the property prices are just really going high and younger couples are struggling to afford, if they've put all of their time and money into one house, turning one house into two is expensive. So how do you counsel people who are struggling with these issues?
And that's an amazing question. And I think first off, the key is to get a sense of course, what their goals are, and beyond just obviously the goal can be just to keep their existing home or to be in a different or be in a new one. But whatever those goals are for the individual, that's the first thing. The second thing is also just being honest and open as to where they are right now, the why behind it, because truth be told, mortgage logic and common logic don't exactly always see eye to eye. And that's really where sometimes it's just we have those conversations to be open and honest about here's where we are right now. I'm always a big believer of we always try to find a way to get to a yes, or we try to find a way to get to make sure that they're approved. At the very worst, it's a no. It's here, and here's why, and here's what we need to do to get there, if that's possible. And then it's just going through the options at that point. And it also helps to know that I have partnerships with some of the best realtors in Northern Colorado that particularly deal with these types of things. So if it does come to a point where they do need to sell the home and they're looking at purchasing another home, I'm very blessed to have some amazing, just like you and I have a great relationship. By the same token, I know we both know some amazing realtors who have gone through the divorce process and are very in tune to it, that we get our clients in front of and make sure that they are aware of all of the things that are going on in that world. So that being said, that's really where, and I think it's also just simply sympathizing to their situation. I mean, it's obviously a very highly emotional. So money is all emotional. But then on top of that, divorce is one of the most emotional things and one of the most vulnerable places any one individual can ever find themselves. And so I think part of it is also just simply being a human being and, and sympathizing with their situation. And lastly, I would say staying in contact. So again, if it's something that we're not able to look at right away, making myself available to both them, their mediator, their attorney, their, anybody else that they may be consulting with, and just be the best and serve as the best member of their.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having like hair problems.
No, that,
So, how closely do you work with individuals or couples as they're going through the divorce process? Either with an attorney or with a CDFA, a certified divorce financial analyst, or another financial advisor, when they are trying to decide how they're going to split their assets, set up child and spousal support, and what role the house plays in that. And because all of these things are interconnected, right? And that's one of the things that makes divorce challenging is if you move the needle in one direction, it's going to switch the needle in the other. And it's a matter of like dialing in, what makes sense for both parties in terms of support, in terms of division of assets, in terms of, child support, in terms of where they're going to live. And yeah, is that something that you do with clients or with their other professionals?
and I certainly strive to be 100%. And that's a great question. And I think it comes down to, so to answer your question directly, yes, I very much try to make myself available and as early on in the process as much as humanly possible.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we're at the point where let's say I've had a client come to me who was there, he's actively married and he has, and it has been discussed and it has been decided that they will no longer be together. And now at this point, it's finding the most efficient route and even talking to clients who they're not even sure whether they want to work with somebody like a mediator or an attorney or what is the next step. So, and that's really where, so not only can I advise and guide and educate in the mortgage side and what does that actually look like for them going forward and looking at their specific financial situation, but then introducing somebody like yourself who can come in and play that role and at least look at if depending on whether it's low conflict, high conflict, what kind of situation are we looking at here. And so I really do see myself as somebody who can holistically look at the picture. And again, I'm going to specifically advise on the mortgage piece, but then holistically try to invite in any other partners to the relationship. And by the same token, if I'm invited in as early on as possible, that generally is going to get the greatest and best result.
Yeah. One of the things that I say 20 times a day is if you're going through a divorce, don't do it alone. Do not do it alone. It's too scary. There are too many opportunities to freak out, make bad decisions, rush through things because you just want it done without understanding the long-term implications. Don't do it alone and make sure that you're supported by good professionals who you trust, right? It takes a village, and I think more and more people are starting to realize that the sort of traditional approach to divorce, where both parties are represented by attorneys and the attorneys drive it and they cram it into a mold. And this is no disrespect to attorneys, and obviously not all attorneys do this, but there is a traditional approach to divorce that doesn't suit everybody. And having this holistic approach, as you called it, where you are working collaboratively with a with a financial advisor, a mediator, an attorney, a mortgage person, a realtor, a therapist. It sounds like a lot, and it sounds like it might be really expensive, but if everyone is working together towards a common goal, ultimately, the money that you lay out is going to save you a lot of heartbreak, a lot of financial mistakes that you'll have to go back and undo later, potential conflict that can really damage your potential to be a effective co-parent, for example, if you have children. So I love talking to people like you and getting more information. I have another question for you. Um, in terms of divorce and mortgages in the family home, have you ever seen cases where parties are like, yeah, we're not going to sell the home. So and so is going to stay in it, and we're not going to sell it for another 10 years or, 3 years or whatever. Do you
Mhm.
ever see that? Because I've
Yeah,
had that question asked to me several times recently.
and that comes down to more the specific agreement. So if the agreement, if their divorce decree and their separation agreement allows for that, then yeah, I mean, I have seen that before where they, actually, I've got one right now who I'm working with, whom they are, so far it's been very amicable. They've already finalized everything, but they've laid it out in their agreement that they're going to take their time on all of the division of assets and all of the division of everything.
Mm,
And they are choosing to take their time, and nobody is rushing the other person. So if that's part of the agreement, then by all means, I again make myself available and ready, and let them know. Of course, as just like any other mortgage product or service, interest rates and pricing is going to change. They're aware of that. They just get to operate on their own timeline. And there's also the things like, and I wanted to ask you a question. Do you come across things like nesting agreements, where if there is children in the home, they want the children to remain in the home, they kind of switch off of, they have a separate residence that's being rented or maybe even purchased separately, but most likely rented, but
mhm.
own the home technically together until things are finalized, or even potentially afterwards. It takes some time to actually go through, but they keep the kids in the home, and then the parents just switch off back and
Yeah.
forth the two.
Yeah, that is something that has become more popular lately. And it's a great option for couples that are collaborative, that do get along well, that trust each other. Um,
Of course. Mhm.
and I mean, obviously, it's a good way to maintain stability for kids, have them be able to stay in the home, and allow for both parents to, cycle through the house. And on paper, it's a great idea for some couples and for some families. I have seen it really blow up though, right? Because you come in and you left things in one way, and all of a sudden all your stuff is taken out of the closet and put over here, and things are moved around, or those types of things. Those aren't good candidates for nesting,
I would imagine.
obviously. Yeah, and it's appealing financially too for some people, and I think sometimes people try to do it for that reason when in a perfect world they wouldn't.
And that's kind of what I've experienced as well, is that it's more of a financial stopgap, or at least placeholder, until some other things
Mhm.
fall into place, and it becomes more advantageous. So now, going back to one thing that you want to say, I kind of wanted to flip the script on you, and ask you a question. Is, between mediator and attorney, when would you say the best, is there a good starting point to figuring out who to use and who not to use? When is it to the point where you should absolutely engage an attorney, or what is an example of you should absolutely engage a mediator? Is there a situation where both make sense? What is that?
Yes. All of the
Great.
above. Yeah, that's a great question. So to answer that, I want to speak kind of at a very root level about different paths through divorce, right? On one hand, you've got pro se divorce, DIY divorce. The majority of divorces in this country, I believe, are pro se, which is parties just doing it themselves,
Mhm.
going to the courthouse, going to the court website, reading instructions, downloading forms, filling them out, um, you know, hoping for the best. It can be very, on paper, it's the cheapest way to go, right? You're just paying filing fees. If the court says you have to take a co-parenting class or mediation, you pay for that. Um, as I am fond of saying, though, oh, what is it? Penny,
Penny saved is penny earned.
no,
No.
penny wise, pound foolish, right? So if you're like, I want to do it the cheapest way possible, we're going to do it ourselves, and you don't know what you're doing, you make mistakes that are ultimately going to be a lot more expensive than the initial layout of, some professional fees, right? On the other end of the spectrum is this more traditional approach where both parties have attorneys. Your attorneys do it, your attorneys do the communicating, they drive the process, you know. Um, a lot of times that escalates conflict. It can be very expensive. Sometimes that's necessary, but not always. There in between, there's a range there for how you can approach a divorce. There's something called the collaborative divorce process. And I'm really excited because some colleagues and I are building a collaborative practice in Fort Collins because we don't have one here. There's really nothing um, up in northern Colorado to speak of. But that is a specified, specific approach and framework for divorce that kind of is it meets right in the middle where both parties are represented by attorneys, and there is a financial advisor, and there is a neutral, like a mediator. And at the outset of the process, everyone signs an agreement saying, we're going to work together collaboratively. We're not going to trial. We are not going to take this to trial. So there's the assurance for the parties that they're both represented, that they're getting their own legal advice, but that the goal is not to escalate conflict, is not to take it to court, but to work as a team to help this couple walk through the divorce process as best supported as they can be, right? So that when things get crunchy, because they always do, there are people around to help put the guardrails up to keep somebody from like going out and drinking with his buddies and hearing like, she's got to take you to the cleaners, you better do this and do that, and then he runs home and like calls every single attorney, and just the whole process gets blown up, right? Because I see that. The way that I support people is either by court-ordered mediation, because like we said, very often court's going to order mediation, especially if it looks like it's going to go to trial or if there are children involved. But also couples who are relatively collaborative, who think that they can do a lot of it on their own, but want someone to help guide them, right? So a lot of my clients are couples who I'm working with from the initial filing to, the final orders, helping them understand the forms. Obviously, I can't give legal advice. If I was an attorney, I couldn't give them legal advice as a mediator, right? And that's why I rely so heavily on other professionals, because if we get to a point and I'm like, I don't know, let's talk to Conor, let's talk to Kim or Dan, or, go talk to an attorney. I never would tell someone, don't talk to an attorney. Um, even if it's just because someone wants to make sure that the documentation they're going to turn into court is written in enforceable language, right? Or, passes the sniff test with a divorce attorney, right? That's sort of where someone is paying an attorney hourly in an unbundled services scenario, rather than paying an attorney to represent you, right? You're just paying an attorney for their advice and wise words. So um, Again, it really depends. It depends. It depends on the couple. Sometimes you have one party who wants to mediate and be collaborative, and you have another party who is high conflict and isn't able to, doesn't want to, wants to lawyer up and is really driving the course of the divorce process. And there's a person over here who still needs support. I work a lot with individuals who are in that situation um, who still need a guide, who need a thought partner, who need somebody to help them manage their communication, manage their conflict, manage their hot buttons, offload some of the emotional stuff that many people take to attorneys, which can be extremely expensive and not very effective, right? Helping them organize financial documents for financial advisors or attorneys, and that role is the role of a divorce coach, right? And that's an actual thing that people are trained and certified in doing. It's not just like I'm good with talking to people. I'm going to be your coach. It's recognized by the Bar Association as a form of alternative dispute resolution.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was a very long answer to your question.
But at the same time, I learned so much in that because you and I have had one-on-one conversations before, but this is cool because even just every time I talk with you, I pick up like an extra little nugget of something like, oh, I've heard of that before on that side of things, and like you said, I'm one to engage with other professionals because I'm not the expert in everything, and I don't desire to be the expert in everything. I want to be an expert in my field and defer and work with high quality, high integrity people around me and whatever that looks like. So, no, I love it. I sincerely appreciate it. So now, is divorce coaching part of also what you're doing as well, or do you have other people that you work with there? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. Well, so my practice is sort of part mediating and part coaching, right? I mean, with the same goal, which is to help individuals and couples, to help people get through the divorce process as sanely as possible, right? As well supported as possible. It is, there are so many risks when people get divorced, right? Um, and so many opportunities for screwing things up, right? Divorce, I just learned this relatively recently. Women, the statistics show that women come out of a divorce with a much higher rate of the possibility of poverty, decreased standard of living. They come out financially, by and large, worse than men do. Men, on the other hand, come out often with more emotional and mental um,
Mm.
problems, right? And the reason for that is very interesting, right? Because in a typical male-female marriage, you're gonna see the women driving the household, driving the childcare, driving the socializing, urging husband to go, get his ducks in a row with a doctor or whatever, organizing social events, organizing the holidays, blah, 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 blah. So when that support is pulled away from men, and again, this is not all men and all women and all marriages, but this is something you see very, very commonly. Men are left without the support system that the women have, right? Men are left with nobody to talk to about their feelings because often their spouse was their sole, sounding board, right? And women tend to be more free with their feelings, talk more openly, seek out groups of people, seek out support. So men are stuck, isolated, feeling alone, feeling like they don't have an outlet for their feelings and their, all of that. And internalizing that can be extremely dangerous for your mental health, for your physical health. You see higher rates of substance abuse in divorced men than you do in women, in heart disease,
Mm,
uh, even suicide, which is, which is heavy, which is one of the reasons why this month I'm trying to focus on men in divorce and making sure that men get the kind of support that women do. Because even though women are more likely to end up in poverty coming out of a divorce, you know, they carry different risks than men, and they are more likely to have support. Men need to learn to ask for support, learn to ask for help, accept help um, from people like you, from people like me, from all the people that we're talking about, so that they can get through the divorce process as healthily and as sanely as possible as well.
yeah.
I went off on a long tangent there,
Oh,
but
it seems like either situation is not ideal. And to your point, engaging with other individuals to help as much as humanly possible. We both know divorce sucks. It's not a first choice, and so it's something that it helps to have individuals like ourselves to help aid and do the best we can during those times. But of course, yes, we of course acknowledge, and that's again kind of going back to what I was saying in regards to sympathizing with somebody's situation and just trying to be there for them as best as you can. That's just, to me at least, that's just being a human being, and
yep.
that's good person, and that frankly does, in my opinion, doesn't take a whole lot of talent. But no, I feel like that was a lot of great information, and there's a lot of things that some ahas in there that we don't think
Hmm.
as the divorce process goes on.
Yeah. Let's do this again.
Absolutely. No,
All right.
absolutely. I love it, and I like the idea of maybe taking a look at different topics. This has been great, and I sincerely appreciate your time. Of course, we'll continue to be there, and whatever we can do to support each other. I think that's something that I absolutely champion that. So I
Yeah.
sincerely appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah.
To chat at you for a little bit as well, and great information on both sides. Sincerely appreciate.
Totally.
Yeah, let's do it again soon.
All righty. Okay, Connor, I'm gonna turn off live here, pause recording.